President Trump is doubling down on a comment from Tuesday that probably gave every Republican strategist out there an ulcer. Here's a refresher.
When you're negotiating with Iran, Mr. President, to what extent are American financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about American financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all.
Now here's what he said when he was asked about that comment last night on Fox.
That's right. That's a perfect statement. I'd make it again. When people hear me say it, everybody agrees. Short-term pain. It's going to be short-term pain. But the pain is much less than people thought.
That so-called perfect statement comes as a new CNN poll shows 70% disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy, 74% disapprove of his handling of inflation, and a whopping 79% disapprove of his handling of gas prices. Joining the conversation is Ron Insana, MS Now business analyst and writer of The Message of the Markets on Substack, and Mondaire Jones is still with us. So, Ron,
yes, ma'am.
I'm not going to ask you about what a beautiful gift this was to Democrats. I mean, maybe I could.
Yeah.
But Trump's statement there was that, you know, it's going to be over soon. It's going to be better before you know it. How realistic is that prognostication?
It's not going to be over soon.
Okay.
It can't be over soon because it's going to take months to get oil. Even if the war were to stop tomorrow and they were going to start to engage wells and do everything else they need to do to get oil out of the Strait of Hormuz and around the world, that is a weeks to months process. Whether it's going to Japan, whether it's going to the California coast, it doesn't matter. It is not going to end soon, and it means that prices will be elevated for a period of time. And there is a point at which, if this were to carry on for a significantly longer period, like through July, then the production of oil starts to wind down in the Middle East. And restarting that is a very, very big problem, which means not just higher prices, but extraordinary supply disruptions around the world, more so elsewhere, Japan, Europe, but we'd still feel the effects as well.
So, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, Mondaire, about our colleague Alex Tabbitt has been speaking to Americans at the pump and getting their thoughts about those comments. Take a listen to what they've been saying.
He doesn't care about our situation. He doesn't. He's just here for pride and ego.
These prices are insane. I just wish gas prices would come down. It's killing me.
Only the rich are surviving right now, and the rest of us are getting more and more in debt.
Mothers with children are being homeless. People can't get food. He needs to do more, not only for the gas, but for his people.
So he chalks it up to short-term pain, but the reality of it is pain, and Americans are suffering, and he's completely out of touch with ordinary Americans. Is this going to be a campaign ad for Democrats to run on?
There has never been a president in the history of this country who has such disdain for everyday people. Yeah. I mean, to say what he said out loud, I mean, look, let's face it, we know that he thinks that, yeah. Right? Like, he cares about the stock market, and in particular, apparently, about his own stock portfolio, given the hundreds of 3,700, excuse me, of trades that he made in individual stocks, largely, leading up to the Iran war that he started and apparently has lost on behalf of this country. Of course, Democrats are going to run on this, but they were already going to do that before those comments. I mean, he just made it even easier to make the case to people. But folks are feeling the pain at the pump. They're seeing it in the grocery stores. And they're struggling, right? I mean, you got a bunch of people who can't go on vacation anymore this upcoming Memorial Day weekend next weekend rather, because of how expensive he has made it to live. And people remember that. They know how it feels. It's not going to go away, to my friend's point over here. And what I also worry about is the way that, people are going to be able to retire in this country, right? Mm. Because we've already seen, the borrowing costs go up. Right. So that means America is going to be further in debt. And that's not just with respect to the United States government. That's also corporations. It's going to be harder for them. And so when people look at their 401ks, I think that this is going to impact stocks as we get closer to November. And I think people who are paying attention to that kind of thing and who have those resources are also going to be upset, right? It's not just going to be lower income people. It's going to be people across the board in this country.
Ron, there's a new report from the Fed that shows economic well-being deteriorated among Black adults, young people, and those with low incomes. Of course, Mondaire basically just spelled it out there. According to that report, 60% of black Americans reported they were doing okay or comfortable in 2025, down from 65% in 24. Declines were also seen among adults ages 18 to 29, with 63% reporting financial stability, and those at the low end of the spectrum. I often hear economists say that, particularly when it comes to black Americans, that their unemployment numbers, their economic well-being is usually like it is a warning sign. It is like the canary in the coal mine.
It's certainly one of them. And you know, I know Catherine's former colleague, Heather Long, has written a lot about the so-called K-shaped economy, and it's getting more K-shaped. Those who are doing well are holding on very well, and those who are in middle and lower income brackets are getting absolutely hammered. If you're middle, you're just hanging on by the skin of your teeth. And if you're in the lower income bracket and you've got grocery prices, which last month had one of their biggest surges in quite a long time, gas prices obviously are moving up. Fuel prices, so jet fuel is doubling the price of, in some cases, airline tickets. So it is a really regressive tax. Everything that we're seeing happen right now with respect to inflation is wildly regressive. What we're seeing on the employment side for specific groups is even worse. Generally speaking, black unemployment runs about a percentage point higher than white unemployment, even through good cycles. And so this is just exacerbating that trend and making it even worse.
Mondare, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of trades were revealed in the most recent ethics filing on Donald Trump's behalf. Why has Congress not passed a law forcing presidents to either not trade while they're in office or have a true blind trust instead of just being managed by family members like what is happening in Donald Trump's case?
Mike Johnson, I was going to say real quick, Mike Johnson addressed that earlier this week, and he had a soundbite where he said, look, the average member of Congress is making $174,000 a year, which is down in terms of real earnings. And then he said, they should be allowed to make a little bit of money because they're sacrificing so much of their life to serve the public.
They also get a $2,700 a month food stipend and travel stipend on
there you go.
Yeah, that only started recently, but I say it happened after I left. But
there was a 4-year window where something could have been done with respect to Trump.
First of all, the president gets paid a lot more than members of Congress do. And more importantly, you know, it's because we've just never had a president who so brazenly engages in the kind of corruption that we see coming out of this White House. That is not an excuse. Congress should have done this a long time ago. I mean, no president should be able to trade in individual stocks, given the ability of the president to influence the market through apparently a tweet or a true social, message.
Even across my career, every government elected official and appointed official was forced to divest their holdings in individual company stocks and go into a blind trust. This has been true. I remember James Baker, when he became Secretary of the Treasury in the Reagan administration, owned Texas American Bank shares. And he had to sell it and had to get rid of it, put the money in a trust. Everything had to go into T-bills. You can't.
Was that by law or just by kind of a norm?
I suspect it was more of a norm, but it was a norm across the board that was widely accepted by everybody who was in position.
Jimmy Carter had to sell his peanut farm.
Yes, he did.
You can't have a norm these days.
No.
Not with this government.
Unless you're watching Cheers.
All gone. Mondare Jones and Ron Insana, great to have both of you guys with us.